Okay, in this video we're going to do part 3 of basic programming concepts, functions. Okay, so we'll do functions.js here, and let's say that we want to do a converting from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So I could have variable temperature equals, let's say, 98.6, and I want to convert that to Celsius. So the formula for converting from Fahrenheit to Celsius is subtracting 32 and then multiplying by 5/9, and then I could print using my console.log temp plus F equals degree C plus C. Okay, so the temperature here is 98.6, so 98.6 F equals, let's see what it gives us for the degree Celsius. 37, and we could test another one that we know the answer to. 32 degrees Fahrenheit should be 0 degrees Celsius. 212 is the boiling point of water in Fahrenheit. In Celsius, it's 100. Negative 40 is the crossover point where negative 40 Fahrenheit and Celsius are the same. So negative 40 gives negative 40. That's trivia that you might want to know. Okay, so I can put all of this into a function. So this is just 3 statements that are run, but if I want to do the same thing more than once, let's say I wanted to do it for all of these, then I would put it into a function. So there's 2 parts to a function. One is the defining it. So function convert to Celsius. So let's see, I have this. So now if I want to do this, I can call the function. Okay, so I have my temperature, it's minus 40. I go to the next line, temperature is, and then it needs to figure out what this is. So this is the definition of the function. Function definition, when JavaScript reads this part of the file, it just makes a note that this function exists. Alright, so it's not going to run it yet. That happens when we get to this part. Convert to C temp runs the function. Okay, when we run a function, there are 3 main steps. First, it takes whatever's in parentheses here and sends it in here. Let's call this down here something different just to be able to refer to them. Okay, so whatever in this t variable, so whatever in between the parenthesis gets copied into this variable. So let's see, I'll put it down here. Convert to CT. When we run this, following occurs. 1, this is called copying arguments. So the T is evaluated and put into the variable temp inside the function. 2, the statements in the function are run until the ending curly brace or a return statement. and 3, the value in the return statement is sent back as the value of the function. Okay, so there's 3 parts here, and the main part is this middle, running the statements. Right, so the first thing that happens is this t is evaluated. It'll have the value -40 when I run it here. That goes into temp, so now temp inside of this code has the value -40. We run the code. And when we get to the return statement here, whatever the value is here that's on the return statement, that will get sent back. So that is this third step here, that if there was a return value in the return statement, then when JavaScript evaluates this whole line that has the function call inside of it, by the time the function is done, it will simply have whatever was returned. So whatever the value is that was returned here will be in the print statement. So this should still print the same thing if we run it, if we don't have an error. Okay, so we changed temp to t. Okay, there's the -40. Now the whole reason to use functions is if we're going to do the same thing more than once. That's the main benefit. Okay, so now we want to do 212 and 32 and 98.6. Maybe we want to do 100 degrees as well, because that's something that weather people like to care about. Maybe we want to do 90 degrees, maybe we want to do 72 degrees, which is thought of as a comfortable room temperature. So we don't have to do this calculation multiple times. Once we have the calculation correct, we just use the function. So we see all of these here. Yeah. Alright, so let's take a look at our study guide for functions. Looks like we need to add something in here, so a function is a collection of statements with a name. Okay, so that's the main thing. 3 steps are evaluating, passing arguments, parameters. Okay, so these are keywords. So the argument is the value passed in. Parameter is the variable name inside the function. So over here we had, when we ran this the first time, t was -40, so the argument here is -40, and the parameter, this variable, is called temp inside the function. Alright, so then we running the statements in the function. These are the 3 steps. And passing back return value. The reason for functions can run same code multiple times without having to type it again. And also logically group together statements that do some specific task. Okay? So we logically group things together. That's easier to make sense of a huge program if we group things together into functions. The function can return a value or not. So this third part, and it can take parameters or not. So we'll say note can have 0 parameters, can also not return anything. Okay, so we could have another example. Let's see, we'll have functions2.js with some other example. let's start a new example where we show something else. So let's say function ask. So we'll give something that doesn't have any parameters and also doesn't return anything. So console.log, we'll say, are we there yet? Console.log, when will we get there? Console.log, I have to use the restroom. Console.log, alright, I am thirsty. These are things that may come up. So now if I go here, I can just say ask, and maybe a console.log, sit tight, be quiet, leave me alone. But maybe that's the response from whoever's driving this vehicle. Okay, node functions 2. So we see, are we there yet? The questions, and then in the middle, and then it happens again. Alright, so this is something that doesn't have any parameters. We still have the parentheses there, we just don't have anything in between it. And the calling of the function always matches up with the function definition. So we have no parameters when we call it, no parameters where we defined it. In the functions, we called it with one parameter, we defined it with one parameter. Let's say we want another function that will have multiple parameters. Let's say we want to compute the average of 3 values, x, y, and z. So we could return x plus y plus z divided by 3, because there's 3 of them. And then console.log average of, let's do var a equals 5, 7, and 8. That's an array of 3 numbers. A is okay, so when we get to this point, this is a function, it's defined. We're actually going to call it here. There's an array, so when we run this statement, A will be printed, it's 5, 7, and 8. And then when it goes to try and print this value, it does the 3 steps. First step is evaluate these values. So this will be a 5, a 7, and an 8. Pass those in to x, y, and z. So x will be a variable with a value 5, y will be a variable with a value 7, z will be a variable with a value 8. That's the first step, passing in those values. Then we run whatever's in here, and all that's in here is this return statement. So we evaluate the return statement. This will be 20 over 3, so 6.66. And then, so that's done. The last step is to return it, send it back, and the value of this expression here will be the average. Functions 2. So there's the average. We have a function that doesn't take any parameters, doesn't have a return statement, that's fine. We can still run it. It does run the statements. Or we can also have a function that takes multiple parameters. It could have a return statement or not. So in math, we think of as a function as taking some inputs and giving some output, but in programming, it may not have an output, it may not have inputs, because there's a second meaning, which is a collection of statements to run. And the syntax that we have here is you have the keyword function, you have the name of the that we're going to use for the function, parentheses, and then lists of variable names, and the curly braces to give the statements. So those are your rules. We can do syntax errors. If I take out this left curly brace, it's probably going to be confused. Syntax error, unexpected. I can take them both out, it'll still be a problem. So that's a syntax error. If I try to not have the parentheses, let's see what happens. There's a problem, unexpected. It's unexpected because if you're defining a function, you have the parenthesis there. You have to have the parenthesis. If I take out the keyword function, there's a problem. You have to have the keyword function. If I'm down here and I forget my parenthesis for, let's say, for calling the function, I'll probably have a problem. So there's a problem. If I forget my parenthesis here, it will actually run, it just won't do the right thing. So it ran, but it didn't print all that stuff. The reason is because when it gets here and it doesn't have the parenthesis, it says, okay, what's the value of this expression? It's a function. That's fine. It's okay to do that. I could even do var x equals ask. Why would you want to do that? Maybe you would do something like this. So now I have another name for my function. Okay, so you can actually have a function sitting there without parenthesis. It just doesn't actually run it. If you want it to run, it has to have the parenthesis. But if I give parameters, then I do need to run it. I could print this here like this. See what it prints. So I am thirsty, average of 578 is, okay, it prints out what the function is there. Okay, so those are things that can go wrong. If I try to use the wrong variable name, let's go back to my functions. Here, if I try to use t, right, t is over here. Here I have temp. It ran and did something wrong, so that's not a syntax error. All right, right. Okay, so that'll be it for basics of functions. You have syntax rules, and you have the what are functions used for, and what are the main steps. You want a quiz, question and answer. JavaScript part 3. One reason a raised bed garden is good is the soil can stay warmer. Raised bed garden, you can look that up, what it looks like. It's a garden that is above the rest of the soil. The soil can stay warmer. Okay.